Nkosenathi Koela.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking time to tell us about your work. And I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I would just say Ikroza LesiNgqi?
Yeah, close. Yeah. Ikroza LesiNgqi.
Can you say it again? It's lovely.
Ikroza LesiNgqi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It consists of several media. It's mixed media installation. Would you say so?
Yes.
Can you tell us about the different parts and how they come together?
Yes, I'd love to. It's an interdisciplinary approach on sound, a multi-dimensional approach on sound. I've been very much interested in this idea that sound exists on many planes. And as it exists on many planes, I've been interested in my own experience of it and how to translate that experience to other people. So one thing is that in our culture in Ngoma, which is a healing ecology, but also a musical ecology, about pharmaceuticals, herbs. It's a practice that encompasses many dimensions, but usually people only associate it with maybe sound and spirituality. And so I was grappling with this idea of how to present the sonic in a constellation. So Ikroza is a constellation, LesiNgqi is of vibrations. So just many forms in which we interact with vibrations, and sonic being one of them, visually being another one. Just these idea of bodies that translate a principle to us, and we digest that information. So the installation itself is in a few parts. One is we have the musical instruments themselves, and we know that something that holds potential to produce vibration. Two, we have these portraits, hanging portraits of myself and my grandmother, who taught me a lot about the chanting, the music, the mythology, the law of African spirituality and ways of being. And it's us chanting in different moments, about 2 years apart. It was part of my doctorate work, exploring chants and the power of vibrations in our healing ecology. And so there's portraits of that where you see this manifestation of sound when people are chanting and moving and seeing the vibration, And then it's a sound installation, so a sound will be cycling in the space. And there's stools as well, stools and a ramp for wheelchair that have transducers that will vibrate. So if you decide, I want to sit and listen and see, feel the installation, then every now and again the vibrations will be part of your body, which allows you then to go in the constellation as well from a feeling point of view, but you're engaging your eyes and your ears. And I said to a friend that if I could make food in the sense of the notes, I would love, and smell, I would do that as well.
So it's this multi-sensational approach, right? Like
Yes.
It's not this division of the senses,
Yes.
but a holistic idea about perception.
Yes. And allowing the sonic to guide us in saying that we might limit this understanding of vibration if we think of sound as only something we can hear, but not understanding that, like old principles in African and Eastern law and in different Western musicologists who were studying, again, the Rousseaus, etc., who were studying this idea of modes and feelings and emotions that exist in the sonic, and them, coming from their borrowing of ancient Kemet in Egypt and seeing the practices there in different parts of Africa, people saying sound has the power to manifest things. Word can manifest, chanting can change and shift vibration. So for me, I'm just interested in providing a fine art but also sensual experience that allows people to have that journey alone. To say that I'm in a constellation or an environment that is suggesting vibrations, and allow their bodies as the medium at which it is receiving to translate that information. as they will.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating, and I think a vast field. And I'm now wondering how it, you explained that, but I'm still asking you again, how it translates into such an art space, you know?
Yes.
Which is not, where you also don't, I think it is a very interpersonal thing. If you practice a healing practice, you really see who you interact with, whom you're healing as a full person. And here you don't know who will come. Anybody who's interested in your work, of course, giving attention, giving interest. But what does it mean for your work? This, not knowing
such
who
a beautiful
who will be there. Does it matter or not?
Such a beautiful question. I mean, it could be asked, it being in Germany, it being outside of the continent.
Yes.
And I was explaining to a friend about the importance of understanding what being an initiated healer is in my timeline, that I exist now. Also understanding that the medicine and the practices must find the people where they are. Not only that the people must find it. And so grappling with this, the ethics of this thing, the reality of the world, and saying, how do you transform lives without me actually having to physically be present? How do I translate and transfer principles? It's like flowers. You have dandelions here, for example. We have dandelions back at home as well. And dandelions are beautifully medicinal, as much as we understood them as Islao, these very sacred plants that connect to certain genetic, the family genetics of a particular clan, for example. And just the beauty of understanding that a flower can translate beauty here in Germany as much as it will translate the same beauty in Africa. And that is, it's releasing a vibration. And so I'm very much thinking about nature and organicness of, actually, let me provide this form of medicine, not as the be-all and end-all, but as a contribution in my timeline to say that for those who want an environment to heal or to reflect or to be engaged, I can provide this. It's as far as I can. And when I'm present, I can activate it. But even if I'm not there, my spirit lingers there. And so does yours. And so this is why the art space becomes so interesting for me. I have a background in African music, as you know, and in art now, in art, sound art, for quite a while. I've been practicing this thing. And at the same journey of the sonic is my healing journey and my initiations into it. And so I've understood that how do I integrate the skills that I've been given in such a we say multidisciplinary, but at home the practice lives in a multidisciplinary form, but for the sake of understanding, you know. And so yes, this was big to it, to say, I don't know who will be there, why, but I feel like every space holds an energetic field, and I can then create a space of pillars, a diagram, shapes, and create a circle or triangles that people are able to enter and experience, and manifest and absorb vibrations that I intend to heal. Whether they heal or not is not up to me. Perhaps people's responses will say, hey, I really felt this thing and I was moved. Or perhaps it triggers visions, triggers memories, triggers whatever it triggers.
Thank you. Yes, it's extremely interesting to think about how artists transform art and art spaces with what they bring into it, like create, transform them differently. So, as you said, your background is also as a musician.
Yes.
And so let me now ask about the connection to the radio piece. So you made a jam session where you then selected material, as I understood it,
yes,
to compose the radio. It's a musical composition.
Yeah.
And how does is there a relation to the sound part of the exhibition?
Well, in terms of using the sound from that, from the Deutschlandfunkkultur into the exhibition, I didn't use the same sound pieces. And I'd never intended to. I was always intending to use sound specific to the installation, and then engage similar principles of the same. I collaborated with 3 other gentlemen, Joe Weinberg, Henry Weeks, and Reiz Molina. Very beautiful musicians and people, and they're all migrants, you know. They're coming from, one is from South Africa, another's from London, other is from Cuba. And just being able to engage this idea of moving in space and negotiating space in the sonic way, but finding restrictions, finding ways, breaking norms and boundaries. And I was talking through them that I really am interested in this idea of sonic intervention, because South Africa has a big history of sound artists or practitioners who are escaping apartheid oppression and coming to London and coming to different parts of the world. Some of their archives still exist. Your Johnny Janis, your Abdullah Ibrahim, you know, Huma Sekela, Miriam Makeba, the list goes on. And they take a moment to use the sonic either for revolutionary, healing, informative means in a different location, on different soil. And so I asked them, let's think about this thing. How do we relate to Germany right now with its landscape, its socio-political, economic framework? And what can we take from our forebears and try to involve in this thing? I have a big culture of sound healing, Reiz as well, working with the Orishas, etc., or deities, you know, that come from the Yoruba culture, and I'm coming from Ngoma, and the 2 other gentlemen, Henry's trying to connect with his roots in Brazil, Joe's from South Africa as well. So saying, how do we include these sonic conversations of wellness and healing and create an exploration, if you will. And that was the piece I presented for the Deutschland. So the principles are the same, but what is then manifest is different.
Let me ask again. As a musicologist, I'm always thinking in genres, and I would say that was music, and this here is a sound art installation. And then you mentioned that you are actually doing a doctoral dissertation on healing, which is also a medical practice. Do you separate them mostly, or would you say also the installation there is it's music because you are a trained musician and composer?
I understand. It's a difficult one. I think that by nature they are different. For example, when I have my academia has a way of being. The sonic outside of academia has a way of being. Healing, ongoma, nobungoma, has a way of being. And so as much as I try to relate them where they intersect, I also know where they don't meet. I know where there's a parameter that say, as much as we can say this is sound art, sound healing, I know that there's a place where there is a distinction. But at the same time, there is the potential to create a new form. So it's difficult for me to say I'm just practicing, you know. And I think the biggest what informs my practice most is that African classical music, African indigenous and cultural music, whatever music would be, has been always, not always, but for a long time on the continent, has been conceptualized from the position of the other. So Western ethnomusicology or musicology casting a shadow of the practices. Now remember I spoke about the Ngoma ecology, an ecology being various ecosystems that work in a space or time, organisms, whatever. So in Ngoma, you have the sonic vibrations, you have crafters, makers who make tools, etc. You have your thinkers, your astrologists, you have all of these things that are all bundled into this conception of Ngoma. And they have their particular roles, but they are understood as Ngoma. And so what ethnomusicology and musicology has done is, because it separates music from culture sometimes, or music from medicine, or music from society, to create this form. This is a Western way, and it's not right or wrong, it's just that way. The issue is when that way then prescribes that all ways must follow this rubric. And so for me, I've been trying to be part of the resuscitation of the practices of Ngoma, venerating the instruments, the instrument makers, as crafts, as highly skilled fine artists, venerating the imagery, so changing our visual perception of the practice, changing our bias, our sonic bias, that is based on what we find as beautiful or musical and non-musical. So this is to challenge those norms as well. So I can say that I do know that there are separations, and even in my dissertation, it's exploring the ritual, the performance art or art ritual divide. Because you have this growing thing in our South Africa and maybe in other parts of the world of ritual art, where people are like, no, there's a ritual in art and the invocation of spirit. And I've been very wary of this practice to say that we must also know what we're dealing with, so that what we're invoking. It comes with the ethics of the practice. It's just like when you receive your doctorate or become a medical practitioner and go do a Hippocratic oath or say that this is my argument. And people will then interrogate that argument, and you're then being held accountable to what you're saying. And in the same way with the ritual custodians are being held accountable. And so the people who perform or make art must also realize that it's not so easy to jump a line. And so I know these difficulties. I'm aware of them as well, and I think that it's just in practice. I find this as part of my initiation, part of my doctorate building, thesis building, this investigation and practice of something. And I guess the Akademie, the Künste and other spaces allow me to then go deeper into that inquiry, on an intellectual, spiritual, and a physical level, very embodied as well.
That's wonderfully perceptive and interesting how you also, as we talked the other day, how you position yourself in a modern society, still researching traditions. I think that's very interesting. You speak of the sonic tools in African rituals for healing. There is a term, itongo?
Yeah, great term.
Dreamtime. Would you explain a bit about this term of the tools? What does it encompass, the sonic tools?
Of course, yeah. Beautiful question. Itongo, the ancestral dream time, the custodians of the spiritual plane that impact the physical plane. It is such a vast concept, Itongo. And the tools then which engage Itongo, that unseen realm, in our culture become things like sonic tools, mbira, nyatiti, ngoni, mkhube, wadi. These instruments then, when you go into them and say, who were the players of these things? You find there were medicine and spiritual people, custodians of a certain craft, and who then created technology sonic technology, in order to access the information from the other side, whether through communal facilitation or through individual meditation. And so now when I present this idea of, this is not just an instrument in the Western sense, this is an archival piece, this is a what is the word? An artifact. This is a way to become a vehicle for manifestation. And it's in our practice. It's not something that I'm theorizing now. It is in the archive. It is in the practice that exists now. And so for me, it is just to provide that context, again, to re-dignify and reify the consciousness, the ngoma, the consciousness of ngoma. And so yes, the beauty of seeing the instruments there, the ngoma drum, the mbira, the nyatiti, all instruments that I've built. One I built here with Joe in the mbira. These are all instruments in their respective cultures that are very deeply steeped in the esoteric practices of healing, nation building. And so yes, this is why it's so important to see that and have that conversation, to know that our art, or whatever art is, or whatever things are, they may transcend our limited understanding cross-culturally. And that is interesting, because maybe it's just that people don't know. It's not that they don't want to know. They've never been engaged with in that way, and so it is to provide that tool. And some people will disregard it and say, it's okay. I have nothing to prove to you. All I'm doing is presenting the work of my people and the people before them, just like you would here, you know.
Thank you. I'm glad that I'm allowed to listen to you explaining. How was this project experience, these 2 years? Where do you see yourself in this group exhibition? Would you like to comment on this? The overall concept of this oscillations exchange.
I really like it because it was one of the few. I don't answer many calls, like an application call. Usually I'm being asked to do something, or I will then say, oh, this is really cool, let me try out. And this was one of those where I've always been advocating for sound to be understood more in the context in South Africa and in the larger diaspora. And so what I think sound art provides me with that ability to dig deeper. Because as a when you're studying music or any other practice, sometimes it's very departmental and silo, so you need to be within that practice. But what sound art provides is a space to explore the art of the sonic, is how I understand it. And art forms are in multiple art forms and modalities. And so I thought, this is so beautiful, because I know that in Germany there's already a big sound art scene, and I know that there's a format to that. Not that it's all electroacoustic, but I've experienced predominantly electroacoustic music being the format of sound art. And so I was very interested in bringing our concepts of sound art, one of many, but just how I have built and advocated for sound art before this. And so I think it's beautiful to be able to then explore that in an exhibition setting, and also to really stamp that the sonic art world can rival is a strong word, but it sits on par with visual arts. It sits on par with fine art. And so even in my piece, it's fine art prints. It's prints on archival paper, Rahmen paper, where it's supposed to last for 200 years. So the pieces themselves are beautiful in that sense, made from kiat, rare wood. And so it's understanding that this world of fine art, sound art, but really we all meet. We can all meet. And again, it's to just say, let's push the ceiling more. And it's about beauty, really. Beauty as a means to medicine. The idea that manifesting beauty, whether it be harmony, a musical term, or dissonance, realizing that these are the principles that we use to find out if we're well or not. And so really activating beauty and access. You spoke about the ramp. Access and beauty, to say, if I can't see it, I can hear it. If you can't hear it, I can feel it. You know, If I can't feel it, maybe I can smell it. This thing, providing avenues for people to access this world, this constellation, this universe that I'm creating. That's why it's a constellation, this idea that it's its own. When you enter there, it's a different portal.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's beautiful, and I'm really looking forward to experience your work in the space, sitting
Yes,
the
yes,
vibrations,
yes.
etc.
Thank you.
And I will hopefully read your dissertation.
Yes, hopefully. I should be doing it right now, but alas, I'm here at Oscillations. Yeah, but I'm
like
nearly
Lee
finished.
said.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah, so hopefully after this, I'll. Right now, I'm wearing the sound art hat.
Yeah.
And I felt, maybe let me write. And then I thought, no, let me give each thing its time.
Yes.
Because I need to get into that mode as well.
Absolutely.
And so, after this, that's the next mode. Thank you so much.